A Werewolf Shifter Romance, written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Echoes of the Forest. The great hall of the Alpha King's castle blazed with torchlight, casting dancing shadows across stone walls that had witnessed countless ceremonies. Anya Ferris stood before a polished bronze mirror in the preparation chamber, her reflection a stranger draped in deep blue silk. At 19, she should have felt joy. Instead, a hollow ache gnawed at her chest, persistent and unexplainable. "You look beautiful, daughter." Owen Ferris, beta to the Alpha King himself, placed gentle hands on her shoulders. His green eyes, mirrors of her own, held something she could not name. Pride, certainly, but beneath it lurked shadows of old grief, secrets he had never shared. Anya forced her lips to curve upward. "Thank you, father." The dress was exquisite, embroidered with silver thread that caught the firelight in mesmerizing patterns. It had cost more than most families in the territory earned in a year. Kieran Thornhart had insisted on only the finest for his bride-to-be. The alpha of the Thornhart pack was nothing if not generous with his gold, though his affections remained as cold as winter frost. Yet the fabric felt wrong against her skin, too stiff, too cold. Nothing like the rough, homespun dresses of her childhood, when they had lived in a modest house at the forest's edge before her father's promotion to beta. Before everything changed, before the woods were forbidden to her. "The ceremony begins at sunset," Owen said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of duty. "The Alpha King himself will preside. It is a great honor, Anya, for our family, for your future. Honor." The word tasted bitter on her tongue, like herbs gone to rot. Anya nodded dutifully, watching her father's reflection retreat from the chamber. The heavy door closed with a finality that made her heart clench. The moment she was alone, she pressed trembling fingers to her chest, where that strange ache pulsed stronger with each passing heartbeat. Something was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. Her mind drifted backward, pulled by invisible threads, to memories she had tried for years to bury. Memories that felt more real than the silk against her skin or the castle walls surrounding her. She had been 7 years old when they lived near the forest. Their house, small but warm, sat nestled between ancient oaks whose branches had sheltered generations of shifters. Her mother would send her to gather herbs while her father trained with the Alpha King's guard. And it was in those woods, where sunlight filtered through leaves and golden streams, that she met him. The boy with storm-gray eyes. He appeared one afternoon while she chased a rabbit through the underbrush, her small feet bare against moss and earth. 11 years old, all lean muscle and wild black hair that fell past his shoulders in tangled waves. His clothes were torn, his feet bare and dirt-stained, and when their eyes met across the small clearing, Anya's breath caught in her lungs. "Who are you?" she had whispered, more curious than afraid. He tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that should have frightened a child. But Anya felt no fear, only a strange pull, as if something inside her recognized something inside him. "Varix," he said finally, voice rough from disuse, or perhaps from screaming in the night. "You should not be here alone. These woods are not safe for little girls." "Why not? Father says they belong to the Alpha King." His laugh was bitter for one so young, carrying echoes of pain she could not comprehend. "Nothing belongs to anyone, and nothing is safe." Despite his warning, he returned the next day, and the day after. Their friendship grew in stolen hours between her chores and his mysterious disappearances into the deeper woods. He taught her to track deer by their hoofprints, to read the forest's moods in the way birds fell silent or wind shifted direction. She brought him bread and cheese stolen from her mother's kitchen, watching as he devoured each morsel with the hunger of someone who did not know when his next meal would come. "Don't you have family?" she asked once, innocently. His jaw tightened, shadows crossing his young face. "My father, but we do not live as you do. We have no house, no pack." She learned not to press. Whatever wounds he carried ran deeper than any cut. There was something else about those meetings. Something she could not explain to anyone. Not even her mother who knew herbcraft and healing. When Varix hurt himself climbing trees or hunting rabbits with sharpened sticks, Anya would press her small hands to the injury without thinking. Warmth would flow from her palms, surprising them both. The bleeding would slow. The pain would ease, tension leaving his young face. "Your hands are strange," he told her one day, not unkindly, watching as a scrape on his arm stopped weeping blood. "They get hot sometimes. Mother says I have a fever inside that never breaks." Varix frowned, something knowing flickering in those storm-gray eyes, but said nothing more. Then came the night that changed everything, that bound them together in ways neither child could understand. Anya was 9 years old when the transformation seized her without warning or preparation. She had been alone in the woods, gathering mushrooms by twilight, when the pain struck. It drove her to her knees in the dirt, a scream tearing from her throat. Her bones twisted, reformed with sickening cracks. Her skin burned as if on fire as fur erupted across her body in waves of agony. Terror consumed her as her human consciousness fractured, replaced by something primal and wild and utterly overwhelming. She did not remember shifting back, did not remember the hours she spent running on 4 legs through the darkness, driven by instincts she did not understand. What she remembered was waking naked and shivering beneath a pine tree at dawn, wrapped in Varix's cloak. He sat nearby, his own clothes disheveled, his eyes carrying knowledge too heavy for 13. Scratches marked his arms, and pine needles tangled in his black hair. "You shifted," he said simply, as if discussing the weather. Anya's teeth chattered violently. "I was so scared. I thought I was dying. I know. I heard you screaming." He moved closer, and she saw it then. His fingernails still held traces of darkness, of claws recently retracted. His canines were slightly too long, not quite human. "I shifted too. So you would not be alone in the forest. So you would know you were not a monster." Something passed between them in that moment, invisible but binding. She reached for his hand with trembling fingers. Their palms pressed together, and warmth flowed between them, different from her healing touch, deeper, more fundamental. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming down her dirt-stained cheeks. They sat together until dawn, painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. 2 children wrapped in mysteries neither understood, but both felt in their bones. That memory should have faded with time, becoming soft and uncertain. Sometimes the details blurred. What words they spoke, how long they sat together, but the feeling never did. The warmth, the safety, the storm-gray eyes watching over her, that lived in her bones. She had been 10 when Owen received his promotion to Beta. The move to the Alpha King's castle happened within a fortnight, brutal in its swiftness. She tried to say goodbye to Varix, sneaking to the forest edge at midnight, but the guards would not let her pass, would not let a boy like him, a rogue with no pack, approach the castle grounds where noble blood lived. He vanished from her life as suddenly as he had appeared, and a piece of her soul went missing. For 9 years, Anya told herself she had imagined the intensity of that connection. They were children playing at friendship, nothing more. The warmth between their palms had been fever. The way her wolf had recognized his had been coincidence. Yet tonight, standing in silk and silver, preparing to pledge herself to Kieran Thornheart, that old ache became a scream her mind could not ignore. "My lady," a servant appeared at the door, face carefully neutral. "It is time. The Alpha King awaits." Anya's legs moved without conscious thought, carrying her through corridors lit by hundreds of candles that made shadows dance on ancient stone. The great hall loomed ahead, its massive doors already open. Inside, it was filled with noble shifters from across the territory, their scents overwhelming her weak senses. Perfume, wine, anticipation, and underneath it all, the musk of predators barely contained in human skin. At the hall's far end, Kieran waited beneath an arch of autumn branches. 28 years old, golden-haired and coldly handsome in his fine clothes. He watched her approach with eyes of ice blue, and Anya felt nothing when their gazes met. No pull, no warmth, no recognition, only emptiness, where something should have been. The Alpha King stood between them, ancient and imposing with gray hair worn in warrior's braids. His golden eyes missed nothing. Beside him, her father's face remained carefully neutral, but she saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. His fingers tapped once against the hilt of his sword, betraying nerves he never showed before. As Anya took her place before them all, before hundreds of witnesses, the ache in her chest twisted into something sharper, a warning she did not understand but could not ignore. She was about to betray something sacred. But what? What bond could possibly matter more than this political alliance? This honor her father spoke of. The ceremony began with ancient words in the old tongue, and Anya's hands trembled as Kieran took them in his own. His grip was cold, possessive, wrong in ways she could not articulate but felt in every fiber of her being. For a brief instant, a pulse of heat stirred beneath her skin, as though her own blood rebelled against the bond. She forced it down quickly, praying no one else noticed. The Alpha King's voice echoed through the hall, speaking of bonds and duty and honor and the strength of their people. Anya heard none of it. All she could feel was the phantom warmth of a boy's hand in hers, storm-gray eyes that had seen her soul beneath the moonlight, and the memory of running through a forest on 4 legs. Not alone, but together. 9 years ago in a life that now seemed impossibly distant, yet more real than anything in this golden hall. Chapter 2. The Rogue King's Claim. The Alpha King's voice resonated through the great hall, words of ancient ceremony that had bound countless pairs throughout generations. Anya stood rigid beside Kieran, every muscle in her body screaming at her to run. But nobility did not run. Daughters of Betas did not flee their duty. Do you, Kieran Thornheart, Alpha of the Thornheart Pack, claim this woman as yours before the moon goddess and these witnesses? Kieran's voice rang clear and cold. I do so claim her. The words should have filled Anya with warmth. Instead, ice crept through her veins. When Kieran's fingers tightened on hers, she felt nothing but the urge to pull away. His touch was calculated, possessive in a way that had nothing to do with affection and everything to do with ownership. She glanced sideways at him. His profile was aristocratic, handsome by any measure, but his ice-blue eyes held no softness when they met hers. No recognition of her as anything beyond a valuable acquisition. Through him, he would have influence over her father, the Beta to the most powerful shifter in the realm. The Alpha King turned his golden gaze to Anya. And do you, Anya Ferris, daughter of Beta Owen Ferris, accept this claim and pledge yourself to the Thornheart Pack? Her mouth opened. The words sat on her tongue, heavy as stones, and then pain lanced through her chest. Anya gasped, stumbling forward. Kieran caught her arm, his grip bruising. Steady, he hissed under his breath, maintaining his public smile. Do not embarrass me. But the pain intensified, radiating from her heart outward in waves that made her vision blur. It felt as if something inside her was tearing, screaming in protest. Her wolf, usually quiet and subdued, surged against her consciousness with desperate fury. No, no, no. The words echoed in her mind, primal and absolute. This was wrong. This claiming was wrong. Anya began, her voice barely audible. The great hall doors exploded inward. The sound was deafening. Ancient oak, 3 inches thick and reinforced with iron, splintered as if struck by a battering ram. Hinges shrieked. Wood fragments flew through the air, and several nobles screamed as debris rained down on the assembled crowd. Through the ruined entrance poured rogues. Anya had never seen rogues before, not truly. The castle guards sometimes spoke of them in hushed tones, calling them criminals and outcasts, shifters without honor or pack. But these rogues moved with military precision, forming ranks as they flooded into the hall. Anya realized it was not natural unity, but training forced upon them. Every movement followed the silent command of the Black Wolf at their lead. Without him, they would scatter like hunters in the wild, 50 or more, all bearing the scars and lean muscle of those who survived by strength alone. They wore mismatched armor and carried weapons that had seen heavy use. Their eyes glowed with barely contained wolves, and their scent hit Anya's senses with overwhelming force. Pine, earth, blood, and something wild that called to the deepest part of her nature. Castle guards drew swords, moving to intercept. Noble shifters shifted into defensive positions, some partially transforming in preparation for battle. The hall descended into chaos, shouts and snarls filling the air. But Anya saw none of it. Her entire being focused on the massive black wolf that padded through the shattered doorway. It was easily the size of a warhorse, far larger than any shifter she had ever seen. Its fur absorbed the torchlight, black as midnight, except for eyes that burned silver in the darkness. Scars marked its body, testaments to countless battles survived. Every line of its muscular frame spoke of lethal power barely leashed. The black wolf stopped at the center of the hall, directly between Anya and the Alpha King. Its massive head swung toward her, and those silver eyes locked with hers. Recognition slammed into Anya with physical force. She knew those eyes, knew them in her bones, in her soul. Storm gray in human form, silver as moonlight when shifted. The wolf's form shimmered, bones cracking and reforming in a transformation so swift it seemed impossible. Within heartbeats, a man stood where the beast had been. He was tall, powerfully built, with broad shoulders and arms corded with muscle earned through brutal survival. Black hair fell past his shoulders in wild waves, and his face bore scars that might have been disfiguring on anyone else, but somehow only emphasized the fierce beauty of his features. A jagged line cut through his left eyebrow. Another marked his strong jaw. But his eyes remained the same storm gray she remembered from childhood, now hardened by years of pain and anger and loss. Varix, Anya breathed, the name escaping her lips without permission. He heard her. His gaze snapped to hers, and something raw and vulnerable flashed across his features, before his expression hardened into something dangerous. When he spoke, his voice carried the unmistakable weight of command. This ceremony is a lie. This claiming is false. The hall erupted in outraged shouts. Kieran's hand clamped down on Anya's wrist hard enough to bruise. "Guards!" he bellowed. "Remove this filth from the Alpha King's hall." But the Alpha King raised one hand, and silence fell immediately. His golden eyes assessed the rogue who dared interrupt a sacred ceremony, weighing and measuring. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. "You dare enter my hall uninvited, rogue. You dare disrupt a claiming ceremony. Give me one reason I should not have you executed where you stand." Varix did not flinch. If anything, he straightened, meeting the Alpha King's gaze with absolute defiance. "Because I have legal claim to this female, a claim that supersedes any contract or political arrangement." Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles. Several of the ancient ones, those who remembered laws from before the current age, leaned forward with sudden interest. Owen moved closer to the Alpha King, his face pale. What claim could a rogue possibly have? Varix turned those storm-gray eyes on Owen, and something cold entered his expression. "Ask your daughter, Beta. Ask her if she remembers a forest 9 years ago. Ask her if she remembers a night when she shifted for the first time, terrified and alone, until someone found her." Blood drained from Anya's face. The memory surged forward with crystal clarity. Pain, terror, transformation, and then warmth, safety, storm-gray eyes watching over her as she learned what it meant to be Wolf. "No," Kieran snarled, his carefully maintained composure cracking. "Childhood friendships mean nothing. She was a child. Whatever claim you think you have is meaningless. I invoke the law of first shift bond." The words fell into the hall with the weight of a hammer on an anvil. Several of the elderly shifters gasped. One ancient female, her hair white as snow, clutched at her companion's arm. "Impossible," Kieran spat. "That law is ancient, obsolete." "But not void," came a raspy voice. One of the elders stepped forward, leaning heavily on a gnarled walking stick. His milky eyes somehow still saw clearly. "The law of first shift bond is among the oldest of our people. It predates even the Alpha King's rule." Alpha King Aldous studied Varix with new intensity. "Explain." Varix's jaw tightened, but he spoke clearly. "When a shifter experiences their first transformation, it is the most vulnerable moment of their existence. The human consciousness fractures. The wolf emerges without control or understanding. Many die from the trauma. Those who witness another's first shift, who guide them through it, who shift alongside them so they are not alone, create a bond that cannot be broken. It is written in the oldest texts. It is law given by the moon goddess herself. That is a law for mates, the elder said slowly. For those destined to be bound. Yes. Varrix's gaze never left Anya. She was 9 years old. I was 13. She shifted alone in the forest, terrified. I heard her screams. I found her. I shifted so she would not be alone. So she would know she was not a monster, but a wolf. We ran together through that forest until dawn. I witnessed her first shift. I guided her through it. By the oldest law of our kind, she is mine. Anya's legs trembled. The memory was no longer distant, but immediate. Overwhelming. She remembered his presence beside her, solid and safe when everything else was chaos. She remembered the feeling of not being alone. This is madness. Kieran's voice rose to a shout. She was a child. Claiming laws require consent, understanding. You cannot hold a 9-year-old to a bond she did not comprehend. The first shift, bond does not require understanding. The ancient elder intoned gravely. It simply is. If what this rogue says is true, if he truly witnessed and guided her first shift, then the bond exists whether she knew it or not. Whether any of us approve or not. Alpha King Aldous turned his penetrating gaze on Anya. Is what he says true? Did this happen? Every eye in the hall fixed on her. Kieran's grip on her wrist tightened to the point of pain. She could feel his silent threat, the promise of consequences if she spoke wrongly. But Anya looked past them all to the scarred, dangerous man who had once been a wild boy in the forest, the man whose eyes held storms and whose presence made something deep inside her chest sing with recognition. Yes, she whispered. Then louder. Yes, it is true. Kieran's face twisted with rage. His aura darkened for just a fraction of a second. Something wrong flickering in his ice-blue eyes. But it passed so quickly that none but Anya seemed to notice. Varrix took a step forward, his voice dropping to something almost gentle despite the lethal tension in his frame. I have spent 6 years searching through every abandoned library, every rogue settlement, every ancient text I could find. I needed to know if what I felt was real, if the law that bound us still existed, and it does. He spread his arms, indicating the rogues behind him. I did not come to shed blood, though I would if necessary. I came to claim what is mine by the oldest law of our people. I came for you, Anya Ferris, as I should have 9 years ago, before they took you away. The pain in Anya's chest transformed into something else. Not agony, but yearning. A pull toward this dangerous stranger who was somehow no stranger at all. Kieran released her wrist and stepped between them, his voice dripping venom. She is mine by contract, by arrangement between her father and myself. Your claim is nothing but the desperate fantasy of a rogue who has no place in civilized society. Varrix's smile was cold as winter. Then let the Alpha King decide. Let him invoke the ancient laws and determine whose claim holds more weight. A contract signed in ink or a bond forged in the most sacred moment of a shifter's life. All eyes turned to the Alpha King. Aldous stood silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at Anya, and his voice, when it came, was surprisingly gentle. The choice, it seems, belongs to you, Anya Ferris. The law gives you the right to accept or reject the first shift bond, though know this. If the bond truly exists, rejecting it will cause you pain for the rest of your life. But the choice is yours to make, freely, without coercion. Anya's heart thundered in her chest. Freedom. He was offering her freedom. She looked at Kieran, at his cold eyes and colder ambition. Then at Varrix, scarred and wild and somehow heartbreakingly familiar, and she knew with absolute certainty what her choice would be. Chapter 3. Blood and Ancient Laws. The great hall trembled on the edge of violence. 50 rogues stood in disciplined formation, hands resting on weapons that had seen too much blood. An equal number of castle guards held their positions, swords drawn, muscles coiled for the Alpha King's command. Between them, nobles pressed backward against stone walls, caught between fascination and terror. Anya stood frozen at the center of it all, her hand still tingling where Kieran had released it. Her entire world had narrowed to the scarred man, whose storm-gray eyes held recognition that pierced straight through her carefully constructed life. Hold. The Alpha King's voice cut through rising tension with absolute authority. Not a single guard moved. Even the rogues, who owed him no allegiance, seemed compelled to stillness by the sheer weight of power radiating from the ancient shifter. You speak of laws older than my rule, rogue. I will hear your claim fully before deciding whether you leave this hall alive or in pieces. Kieran stepped forward, his aristocratic features twisted with barely contained fury. My king, this is absurdity. The ramblings of a desperate outcast mean nothing against legitimate contract. Her father agreed. I am aware of what her father agreed to. The Alpha King's golden eyes flicked briefly to Owen, whose face had gone ashen. But the law of first shift bond supersedes all contracts if proven true. Continue, rogue. Explain yourself completely. Varrix's jaw tightened, but he met the Alpha King's gaze without flinching. In that moment, Anya saw not a desperate outcast, but something far more dangerous. A leader. Someone who had commanded the loyalty of dozens of rogues, who moved with the confidence of a wolf, who had survived when survival should have been impossible. My name is Varrix, he said, voice carrying through the hall with unexpected eloquence. Son of Tobias, who was expelled from his pack 23 years ago, accused of stealing land from the Thornheart territory. Owen's sharp intake of breath was audible. Several nobles exchanged glances, recognition flickering across aging faces. Varrix continued relentlessly. My mother died giving birth to me during that exile. No healer would come to aid a rogue female. She bled out in a cave while my father held her, powerless to save her. His voice remained steady, but something raw lurked beneath the words. I was raised alone with a bitter man who had lost everything. No pack, no home, no mate. Only a son he could barely stand to look at, because I reminded him of what he had lost. The ancient elder with milky eyes leaned heavily on his walking stick, his voice creaking with age. Tobias. Yes. I remember. The case was brought before the council. The evidence seemed conclusive. The evidence was forged. Owen's voice cracked as he spoke, drawing every eye in the hall. The beta of the Alpha King looked 10 years older than he had moments ago. I was a young warrior then, 20 years old, following orders without question. I never investigated the claims myself, never thought to doubt my superiors. Varrix turned those storm-gray eyes on Owen, and the temperature in the hall seemed to drop. And yet you rose through the ranks on the foundation of my father's ruin. Tell me, Beta, did you sleep well these past years? Owen flinched as if struck. I did not know. I swear on the moon goddess. I did not know the truth until... He drew a shuddering breath. 2 weeks ago, I found old documents in the archives. Records that had been deliberately misfiled. They proved Tobias was innocent. That the land theft was staged by... my father. Kieran's voice was ice, his posture rigid. You dare accuse my deceased father of such dishonor based on moldering papers? Based on signed confessions from the men he paid? Owen's voice gained strength, decades of suppressed guilt fueling his words. Based on surveys that show the disputed land never belonged to Thornheart territory in the first place. Based on testimony from shifters who were threatened into silence, but left written accounts before they died. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. The Alpha King raised his hand for silence, his expression unreadable. Varrix stepped closer, his bare feet silent on stone floors. My father tried for years to clear his name. Every petition was denied. Every attempt to present evidence was blocked. Finally, 7 years ago, he stopped trying. His voice dropped to something deadly quiet. Hunters found him in the deep forest. Professional hunters. The kind that don't work cheap and don't ask questions about their targets. You accuse my family of murder now? Kieran's composure cracked further, his aura flickering with something dark. This is slander built on convenient accusations. I was 16 when they killed him. Varrix spoke over Kieran's protests, his gaze never leaving Anya. I found what was left 3 days later. The hunters had been thorough. But they left one thing, a coin in the dirt. Silver, with the Thornheart crest stamped clear as day. The ancient elder sucked in a breath. Several nobles gasped. Even the Alpha King's eyes narrowed dangerously. Kieran's face went pale, then flushed with rage. That proves nothing. Anyone could have dropped. Enough. The Alpha King's command silenced every voice instantly. These are serious accusations that will be investigated thoroughly, but they are not why we are gathered here. Return to the matter of the first shift bond. Varix nodded, but his eyes remained hard as he looked at Kieran. When my father died, I had nothing. No family, no pack, no purpose. I survived by becoming what everyone already believed I was, a rogue. I gathered others like me, shifters cast out for crimes they did not commit, for politics they did not understand, for simply being inconvenient to those with power. His gaze swept the assembled nobles, and more than a few looked away uncomfortably. But there was one thing I could not forget. Varix finally looked back at Anya, and his expression softened in a way that made her chest ache. A little girl with green eyes who shared her food with a strange boy in the woods, who pressed her hands to my wounds and somehow made the pain stop, who was brave enough to befriend someone with no name and no home. Anya's breath caught. The memories were crystal clear now, no longer distant or dreamlike, but immediate and visceral. I was 13 when I found her shifting for the first time, Varix continued, his voice dropping to something almost tender despite the audience. She was 9 years old, terrified, convinced she was dying. I heard her screams from half a mile away. When I found her, she was caught between forms, sobbing in pain and terror. So I shifted too. I ran with her through that forest until dawn, showing her she was not alone, not a monster, just a wolf learning what she was. The ancient elder nodded slowly. That would constitute a first shift bond. The law is clear. Whoever guides another through their first transformation, who prevents them from dying of fear or losing themselves to the wolf, creates a bond that cannot be severed except by death. This is insanity, Kieran snarled. She was a child. He was barely more than one himself. Neither had the capacity to understand what they were creating. The first shift bond does not require understanding. The elder's voice carried the weight of centuries of law. It requires only presence, guidance, and the shared vulnerability of transformation. If this occurred as he describes, the bond exists. It always has. Anya felt dizzy. All these years she had carried something inside her chest, something that ached and pulled and yearned. She had thought herself broken, thought herself incapable of feeling what others felt, but it had not been absence. It had been recognition of a bond formed in childhood, that nothing, not distance or time or political arrangements, could erase. I spent 6 years searching, Varix said quietly. I taught myself to read from books abandoned in rogue settlements. I broke into libraries in the dead of night. I traded favors and information until I found every text that mentioned the old laws. He pulled a worn leather journal from inside his shirt. I documented everything. Every reference. Every precedent. I needed to know if what I felt was real or the desperate fantasy of someone who had nothing else. The Alpha King extended his hand, and Varix approached without hesitation, placing the journal in his palm. Aldous flipped through pages covered in cramped, determined handwriting. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his golden eyes. This is thorough, the Alpha King said finally, more thorough than many scholars could achieve. He looked up at Varix with new assessment. You lead the rogues of the Deepwood territory, do you not? The ones who have been protecting merchant caravans from bandits. I do, and you maintain order among them through strength and law, not chaos and violence. I do. The Alpha King closed the journal. You are no simple outcast. I am exactly what circumstance made me. Varix replied evenly. Nothing more. Nothing less. Kieran made a sound of disgust. A pretty speech does not change the fact that she is mine by contract. Her father signed. I signed under false pretenses. Owen's voice rang clear. I believed I was securing my daughter's future with an honorable alpha, but 2 weeks ago, I learned that the Thornhart family built their wealth and power on lies and murder. I discovered too late that I was binding my only child to corruption. Father, Anya whispered, shocked by his public admission. Owen met her eyes, his own glistening. "Forgive me, daughter. I should have investigated years ago. Should have questioned. Should have protected you from this." The Alpha King studied them all, his ancient mind weighing centuries of law against political convenience. Finally, he spoke directly to Anya. "The choice falls to you, Anya Ferris. The first shift bond, if it exists, gives you the right to accept or reject it. But know this. If the bond is real, rejecting it will cause you pain for the rest of your life. Your wolf will never settle. You will feel incomplete forever." His voice gentled slightly. "But the choice is yours to make freely. I will honor whatever you decide." Anya looked at Kieran. His ice-blue eyes held no warmth, only cold calculation and barely suppressed rage. She saw clearly now what she had been too dutiful to see before. He wanted her father's influence, wanted proximity to power. She was a means to an end, nothing more. Then she looked at Varix. Storm-gray eyes that had witnessed her first transformation. Scarred hands that had held hers through the most terrifying night of her childhood. A presence that called to something deep in her soul. Something that had been crying out for 9 years. The ache in her chest transformed. Not pain, but recognition. Coming home. "I go with him," Anya said clearly. "I choose Varix." The hall exploded with sound, but she heard none of it. She saw only Varix's expression shift from desperate hope to something that looked heartbreakingly like relief, and she knew, with absolute certainty, that she had made the only choice she could have lived with. Chapter 4. Into the Wild. The silence that followed Anya's declaration stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then Kieran moved. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with bruising force. "You don't know what you're choosing. Life with rogues means filth and hunger and early death. I offer you castles, silks, a position of honor. You offer me a cage." Anya met his ice-blue eyes without flinching, surprising herself with her own steadiness. "A gilded cage is still a cage, Alpha Thornheart." Something dark flickered across Kieran's aristocratic features. For just a moment, his carefully maintained composure cracked, and his aura pulsed with something wrong, something that made the hair on Anya's arms rise. But it vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. "So be it." His voice dropped to something deadly quiet. "But when you come crawling back, begging to be taken in from the cold and hunger, remember that I offered you everything, and you chose nothing. She chose freedom." Owen's voice rang through the hall with unexpected strength. "She chose honesty over manipulation, and I stand with her decision." Gasps echoed from the assembled nobles. For a beta to publicly support his daughter's rejection of a political alliance was nearly unheard of. But Owen stepped forward, placing himself between Anya and Kieran with protective determination. "I would rather my daughter live with honorable rogues than corrupt nobility," Owen continued, his green eyes burning with years of suppressed guilt finally finding voice. "I have spent too long following orders without questioning their source. Never again." The Alpha King observed them all with those ancient golden eyes that missed nothing. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute authority. "The law has been invoked. The choice has been made. Kieran Thornheart, you will answer for the accusations brought against your family. But that is a matter for another day. Today, the first shift bond is acknowledged." He turned to Varix, and something almost resembling respect flickered across his weathered features. "You have proven yourself more than a simple outcast, Varix, son of Tobias. You lead with intelligence and prepare with thoroughness. Take your bonded and leave my hall in peace. But know this, I will be watching how you treat the daughter of my beta. If I hear of harm or mistreatment, law or no law, I will come for you myself." Varix bowed his head, the gesture showing respect without submission. "You will hear only that she is cherished and protected, Alpha King. On my life I swear it. See that I do." Aldous stepped aside, creating a clear path to the shattered doors. "Guards, let them pass." Anya barely had time to process what was happening before Varix was at her side. He moved with that same predatory grace she remembered from childhood, now honed by years of survival into something lethal and beautiful. "Can you ride?" His voice was low, meant only for her ears. What? On my back, in wolf form. Can you ride? The question should have seemed absurd. But Anya found herself nodding, some deep instinct telling her that this was right, that this was always how it was meant to be. Varix's smile was brief but genuine, transforming his scarred face into something that made her breath catch. Hold tight then. We leave now. Before Thornheart's rage finds its outlet in violence. He was right. Kieran stood rigid near the altar, his fists clenched so tightly that blood dripped from where his nails cut into his palms. The barely leashed fury in his eyes promised retribution, law or no law. The transformation happened in a fluid rush that stole Anya's breath. One moment, a scarred man stood beside her. The next, the massive black wolf from before filled her vision. He was even larger than she remembered, easily tall enough that his back reached her chest. Scars marked his dark fur, silver lines against midnight black. Those silver eyes looked up at her with unmistakable intelligence, and something softer. Trust. He was trusting her completely, making himself vulnerable in ways that went beyond the physical. Anya gripped his thick fur, pulling herself onto his broad back. The moment she settled, warmth flooded through her, familiar and comforting. Her wolf, usually so quiet and subdued, surged forward with joyful recognition. This was right. The rogues formed around them in protective formation, and together they moved toward the destroyed entrance. Anya caught her father's eyes as they passed. Owen's face was wet with tears, but he smiled through them. "Be happy, daughter," he called out. "That is all I ever wanted for you." Then they were running. The black wolf moved beneath her with power that should have been terrifying. Each bound covered impossible distances, his muscles bunching and releasing with perfect rhythm. The rogues kept pace, forming a protective circle as they poured out of the castle and into the darkening forest beyond. Anya heard shouts behind them, the sounds of pursuit, but Varix didn't slow. If anything, he pushed faster, his massive frame eating up ground with supernatural speed. The autumn forest blurred around them, trees becoming dark streaks in her peripheral vision. She should have been afraid, should have questioned her impulsive choice. Instead, Anya felt more alive than she had in 9 years. The wind whipped through her hair, tearing it free from its careful arrangement. Her blue silk dress, so carefully chosen for a ceremony that never happened, tangled around her legs. But none of it mattered. She was free. The pursuit fell away. After what might have been miles, or might have been moments, time lost meaning in the rush of movement and freedom. Finally, at some invisible signal, Varix slowed. The other rogues dropped back, creating space. They had reached the edge of Alpha King's territory, Anya realized. Beyond this point lay unclaimed forest, the wild places where rogues made their homes. The black wolf stopped, and Anya slid from his back. Her legs trembled from the ride, unused to such exertion. Before she could stumble, Varix shifted back to human form and caught her arm, steadying her. "Easy," he murmured. "The first ride is always overwhelming." Anya looked up at him, truly seeing him now without the chaos of the ceremony hall. He was tall and powerfully built. Yes, but there was a gentleness in how he touched her, a careful control that spoke of someone who knew his own strength and consciously leashed it. "Thank you," she whispered, "for coming for me, for not giving up." Something raw flickered across Varix's scarred face. "I would have stormed 100 castles to find you, would have faced down every alpha in the realm. You were always mine, Anya, even when I had no right to claim you, even when I was just a rogue with nothing to offer. You were mine." The words should have frightened her, should have felt like possession rather than devotion. But all Anya felt was that same bone-deep recognition, that sense of finally being where she belonged. The moment shattered as another rogue approached. This one was younger than Varix, perhaps 25, with bright copper-red hair and amber eyes that held suspicion. A wicked scar marked his throat, white against tanned skin. "You brought her here?" The redhead's voice dripped contempt. "The beta's daughter? She'll betray us the first chance she gets, run back to her comfortable castle life and bring guards down on all our heads." Varix's expression hardened instantly, his entire demeanor shifting to something dangerous. "Mind your tongue, Dryston. She is my Luna by first shift bond. Question her again. And you question me." The threat hung heavy in the air. Several other rogues had gathered, watching the confrontation with wary interest. Anya realized with sinking certainty that she would need to prove herself to these people. They had no reason to trust her beyond Varix's word. Drystan's jaw clenched, but he stepped back. The submission was grudging, resentful. "As you command, Alpha." The title surprised Anya. Alpha. Not leader or chief, but the formal rank usually reserved for pack shifters. Yet here in this band of outcasts, Varix commanded the same respect and authority. "Come." Varix's hand settled on the small of her back, guiding her forward. "The camp is still an hour's walk. Can you manage, or should I carry you?" Pride made Anya straighten her spine. "I can walk." His smile was small, but approving. "I thought you might say that." The journey through darkening forest tested every bit of Anya's determination. Her soft slippers, made for castle floors, shredded on roots and rocks. Her silk dress caught on brambles and thorns. By the time they reached the rogue camp, she was limping and bleeding from a dozen small cuts. But she did not complain, did not ask to be carried, because 60-plus pairs of eyes watched her every step, measuring, judging, waiting for weakness. The camp itself was nothing like she expected. Varix noticed her surprise. "They fight as one because I drilled them until their bodies obeyed," he admitted quietly. "But outside of battle, they are still fractured souls. We are not yet a true pack, only broken people holding together by will. No crude tents or temporary shelters. Instead, a series of caves had been expanded and fortified, their entrances hidden by careful positioning and overgrowth. Smoke from cooking fires drifted upward, dispersed by the tree canopy. Children played near one of the larger caves, their laughter surprisingly normal. "We are not savages," Varix said quietly, reading her surprise. "We are simply people who had nowhere else to go." He led her to a smaller cave, set slightly apart from the others. Inside, it was surprisingly comfortable. Thick furs covered the floor. A small fire pit sat ready with wood. Simple but clean. "This is yours," Varix said, then hesitated. "Unless I can sleep outside, if you prefer." "I won't press my claim beyond what you're comfortable with." Anya looked at him. This dangerous, scarred man who had spent 6 years researching ancient law just to find her again. Who had faced down the Alpha King for her. Who now offered her the choice she had been denied her entire life. "Stay," she whispered. "Please. I don't want to be alone." The relief that flooded Varix's expression was almost painful in its intensity. "Then I will stay. For as long as you want me." He settled near the cave entrance, giving her space and privacy. But Anya felt his presence like a warm anchor, steadying her after the chaos of the day. Outside, the rogue camp settled into evening routines, and somewhere in the distance, wolves howled their greetings to the rising moon. Anya wrapped herself in furs that smelled of pine and earth, and something unmistakably Varix. Her body ached, her feet throbbed. Her life had been irrevocably changed in the space of a few hours. But for the first time in 9 years, the hollow ache in her chest was gone. Chapter 5. Blood and Awakening. 3 weeks passed in a blur of discovery and difficulty. Anya learned quickly that life among rogues bore little resemblance to her sheltered existence in the Alpha King's castle. There were no servants to bring her meals, no maids to dress her, no soft beds or heated chambers. Instead, she woke before dawn to help prepare communal meals over open fires. Her soft hands, accustomed to needlework and herb gathering, blistered from skinning rabbits and curing hides. Varix taught her to track deer through the forest, reading signs in broken branches and disturbed earth. She learned to fight with a blade, her movements clumsy at first, but gradually finding a rhythm that felt almost natural. The rogues watched her constantly, some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled contempt. She heard their whispers when they thought she could not. "Soft castle girl, Beta's princess, won't last a month." But she endured. For Varix, who watched her with those storm-gray eyes that held both pride and concern. For herself, determined to prove she belonged here. Drystan made his opposition clear at every opportunity. The copper-haired rogue gathered others who shared his suspicions, creating a faction within the camp that questioned Varix's judgment. "She slows us down," Drystan announced one evening as they gathered around the central fire. His amber eyes glittered with challenge. "Yesterday's hunt failed because she couldn't keep pace. We returned empty-handed because of her." Anya felt heat creep up her neck. It was true. Her lungs had burned, her legs had given out, and the deer had escaped. "She learns." Varix's voice carried quiet authority. "As we all did once. We learned as children." Another rogue muttered. "Not as grown women playing at being wild." Anya opened her mouth to defend herself, but Varix stood, his presence commanding immediate silence. "Any who question my Luna may challenge me directly. Here. Now. Otherwise, this discussion ends." No one moved. Even Drystan, for all his resentment, would not dare. But the tension lingered, poisonous and patient. That night, unable to sleep, Anya sat outside their cave watching stars wheel overhead. Varix emerged silently, settling beside her with the easy grace of someone who had spent his life in these woods. "You don't have to prove yourself to them," he said quietly. "Don't I?" Anya hugged her knees. "They're right. I'm weak, useless, a burden. You're learning faster than any of them did." His shoulder pressed against hers, solid and warm. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" She shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Courage. You left everything familiar for something unknown. You choose difficulty over comfort every single day. That takes more strength than they understand." Anya turned to meet his gaze, finding something raw and vulnerable there. "Tell me about your father, about what happened after I left." Varix was silent for so long she thought he might refuse. Then words began spilling out, rough with old pain. He told her about the bitter years following the exile, about hunting for survival while his father descended into rage and grief, about learning to read from discarded books because knowledge was the only weapon a rogue could sharpen in secret, about the day he found his father's torn body and knew with absolute certainty that it had been murder, not accident. "I was 16. Varix finished, his voice barely audible. "Alone. Furious. I could have become what they all expected. A monster. But I remembered a girl with green eyes who saw me as human when no one else did, who shared her food with a nameless boy. That memory kept me from becoming the thing they accused my father of being." Anya's chest tightened painfully. "I never knew. If I had known you needed me, you couldn't have changed anything." His hand found hers in the darkness. "But you saved me anyway, without knowing it. The memory of your kindness was enough." Their fingers intertwined, and Anya felt that warmth again, the same sensation from childhood but deeper now. Adult recognition layered over innocent friendship. "I looked for you," Varix continued, "for years. Every settlement I passed, every packed territory I skirted, I searched. When I finally learned Owen Ferris had been promoted to Beta and moved to the Alpha King's castle, I knew finding you would be impossible. You were untouchable, but I couldn't stop. I gathered others like me, built something resembling a life, but every night I dreamed of storm-gray eyes looking at me with recognition instead of fear." His scarred thumb traced patterns on her palm. "When I heard about your engagement to Kieran Thornhart, something in me snapped. I spent 6 years researching, planning, because I had to know if what I felt was real or desperate fantasy. It was real." Anya whispered. "It is real." The tension between them shifted, became charged with something neither could deny. Varix stood abruptly, pulling her with him. "Come, there's somewhere I want to show you." He led her through moonlit forest to a hidden lake she recognized instantly. The same lake where they had played as children, where he had taught her to skip stones across still water. It looked unchanged, timeless, beautiful. "I come here when I need to remember who I was before everything went wrong," Varix said. "Before bitterness, before rage. When I was just a boy who found a friend." Anya turned to him, her heart hammering. "We're not children anymore." "No." His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing her lower lip. "We're not." The kiss started gentle, questioning. But the moment their lips met, Something ignited. 9 years of separation, of yearning, of incomplete souls, finally finding their other half. Varix's arms wrapped around her, pulling her against his powerful frame. Anya's fingers tangled in his long black hair, and she tasted copper and pine, and something uniquely him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Varix rested his forehead against hers. I love you, have loved you since we were children. Will love you until I die. I love you too, Anya breathed. I think I always have. He kissed her again, deeper this time, his hands spanning her waist. They sank to the soft grass at the lake's edge, lost in each other, in the rightness of finally being together. A whistle split the air. Sharp, urgent. The alarm. Varix was on his feet instantly, pulling Anya up with him. Something's wrong. They ran back toward camp, but the attack had already begun. 20 masked figures in dark leather swarmed through the caves, blades flashing in firelight. Not castle guards in their formal armor. These were professionals, mercenaries hired for killing, not capture. Assassins! Varix snarled, already shifting partially, his claws extending. Protect the children. The battle was chaos and screaming. Anya saw Drystan fighting 3 men at once, his movements brutal and efficient. Other rogues poured from caves, forming defensive lines around the young and weak. One mercenary broke through, heading straight for Anya. She froze, terror locking her muscles. Then instinct took over. Her wolf surged forward with savage fury, and Anya moved. She ducked his swing, grabbed a fallen blade, and drove it upward into his side. The man fell, blood staining the dirt. She had killed. The realization should have horrified her. Instead, she felt only grim satisfaction, and the primal certainty that she would do it again to protect her people. A scream made her turn. Varix fought their leader, a massive man wielding a longsword with deadly skill. They moved in a deadly dance, neither giving ground, until the mercenary feinted left and struck right. The blade punched through Varix's shoulder, emerging bloody on the other side. Varix dropped to his knees, crimson spreading across his chest. No! Anya was running before conscious thought formed. She reached him as he collapsed, his blood hot against her hands. Too much blood. Too fast. Stay with me, she commanded, pressing her palms to the wound. Don't you dare leave me. Not now. Heat erupted from her hands. Not the gentle warmth she remembered from childhood, but searing, golden fire. Light poured from her palms, so bright several fighters stopped mid-strike to stare. Anya felt something unlock inside her. A door she had not known existed flying open. Power flooded through her veins, ancient and overwhelming. She could feel Varix's body beneath her hands, could sense every torn muscle and severed vessel. And she could fix it. The wound began closing, tissue knitting back together, blood vessels reconnecting, bone and muscle regenerating at impossible speed. The blade wound sealed completely, leaving only a silver scar and Varix gasping in shock. The golden light faded. Silence fell across the camp as every rogue and remaining mercenary stared at her in stunned disbelief. Drystan's voice broke the spell. The mercenaries are fleeing. After them. Several rogues gave chase, but most remained frozen, watching Anya cradle Varix's head in her lap. The man who had stabbed him lay unconscious nearby, subdued by other fighters. Varix's eyes fluttered open, storm gray and clear. What did you do? I don't know, Anya whispered, staring at her hands. They no longer glowed, but she could still feel the echo of that power humming beneath her skin. I just knew I couldn't lose you. Healer, someone breathed. She's a healer. The word rippled through the watching rogues with reverent awe. Healers were rare, perhaps 1 in 10,000 shifters. They were treasured, protected, revered. Varix sat up slowly, testing his shoulder. It moved perfectly, as if never injured. He looked at Anya with something between wonder and concern. This changes everything. Why? But Anya already knew. Power like this would draw attention. Dangerous attention. Drystan returned, his amber eyes fixed on her with new calculation. No longer contempt, but something worse. Hungry ambition. If Kieran learns what she can do, he'll never stop hunting her. Varix pulled Anya close, protective and possessive. Then we make sure he never learns. But as the camp settled into uneasy rest, as the dead were mourned and wounded tended, Anya felt the weight of her new reality. She was no longer just a Beta's daughter playing at being rogue. She was something dangerous, something valuable, something worth killing for. Chapter 6. Claiming and Betrayal. The full moon hung heavy in the autumn sky, casting silver light across the hidden lake. Anya stood at the water's edge, her heart thundering against her ribs. Tonight was the night. After weeks of living among the rogues, of proving herself through blood and sweat and determination, tonight she would complete the bond that had existed between them since childhood. Varix approached from the forest shadows, his bare chest marked with the silver scar where she had healed him. In his hands, he carried wildflowers braided into a crown, their white petals luminous in the moonlight. "The old way," he said softly, placing it on her head. "Before castles and ceremony, when shifters pledged themselves under the moon goddess's eye alone." Anya's breath caught. "I'm ready." He cupped her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones with reverent gentleness. "Once this is done, there is no undoing it. The claiming mark is permanent. The bond cannot be severed except by death. Are you certain?" "I have never been more certain of anything." She placed her hands over his. "I choose you, Varix. I choose this life. I choose us." The kiss began gentle but quickly deepened into something desperate and consuming. 9 years of separation, of incomplete souls finally finding their other half. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer. She tasted copper and pine and wild things, and beneath it all, recognition that went soul deep. They sank to the soft grass together, moonlight painting their skin silver. Varix's mouth traced the line of her jaw, her throat, finding the sensitive junction where neck met shoulder. His breath was hot against her pulse point. "This will hurt," he warned, his voice rough with barely leashed need. "I trust you." His teeth elongated, canines extending into something not quite human. The bite was sharp and immediate, breaking skin with surgical precision. Anya gasped, pain flaring bright and hot. But beneath the pain came something else. Power. The first shift bond, dormant for 9 years, roared to life with overwhelming force. She felt him, not just physically but in her mind, her soul, every hidden corner of her being. His emotions flooded through her. Fierce love, desperate relief, protective fury, and underneath it all, bone-deep certainty that she was his, and he was hers, and nothing would ever separate them again. When he pulled back, blood stained his lips. The mark on her throat burned with golden light, before fading to a permanent silver scar in the shape of his bite. The claiming mark, visible proof that she belonged to him and he to her. "My mate," Varix breathed, wonder and possessiveness warring in his storm-gray eyes. "Mine. Yours," Anya confirmed, pulling him back down to her. "Always yours." They came together under the moon's witness, 2 souls finally made whole. The bond between them sang with completion, and Anya felt her wolf stir deep inside, no longer dormant but awakening, recognizing her mate at last. Morning light found them still tangled together, the claiming complete. When they returned to camp hand in hand, every rogue knew immediately what had happened. The claiming mark on Anya's throat announced it to all who had eyes to see. Varix stood before his assembled pack, one hand resting possessively on Anya's waist. "My mate, your Luna." Any who questioned this questioned me directly. No one questioned. Even Drystan, standing at the back with his amber eyes unreadable, offered grudging acknowledgement. The days that followed brought unexpected joy. Anya established a healing tent, using her newfound abilities, treating injuries and illnesses that had plagued the rogues for months. Word spread, and soon shifters from other territories began appearing, desperate for help their own packs could not provide. "You're changing things," Varix told her one evening, watching her tend a child's fever, "making people see rogues as more than criminals and outcasts." Anya smiled, pressing her glowing hands to the girl's forehead. "We are more." We always have been, but not everyone celebrated their bond. Drystan watched from the shadows, resentment festering like an infected wound. He had served Varix loyally for years, proven himself in countless battles. Yet this castle-raised female had swept in and claimed the position that should have gone to his sister, his blood. When the cloaked figure appeared at the forest's edge 3 weeks after the claiming, Drystan met him without hesitation. Kieran Thornhart sends his greetings. The messenger's voice was oily, calculated, and an offer. I don't deal with Thornhart scum, not even for leadership of the rogues, for gold enough to establish your own territory, for revenge against the female who stole what should have been your family's honor. Drystan's jaw clenched. What does he want? Information, patrol schedules, weaknesses in the camp's defenses. The messenger produced a heavy coin purse. And when the time comes, ensure the healer is not harmed. Thornhart wants her alive. The rest, he shrugged. Collateral. Drystan stared at the gold, war raging behind his amber eyes. Finally, he took the purse. Tell me what I need to do. Kieran had not been idle since Anya's escape. Humiliation burned in his chest like acid, consuming his careful composure. He had consulted practitioners of arts better left unnamed, learned of rituals that could break even the first shift bond if executed properly. But he needed the healer. Her abilities were too valuable to destroy. He would break her bond with the rogue, claim her for himself, and use her power to cement his position as the most influential alpha in the realm. The attack came on a moonless night 2 weeks later. 150 shifters from multiple packs, united by Kieran's gold and promises of territory. They moved through the forest in eerie silence, guided by Drystan's carefully planted false information about patrol routes. Anya woke to screaming. She bolted upright in the cave she shared with Varix, his hand already gripping her wrist. Stay here, he commanded, already half-shifted. No, our people need their alpha protecting them. Stay, hidden. He kissed her hard and fast, then disappeared into the chaos outside. But Anya could not hide while her pack died. She grabbed a blade and ran into hell. The camp was carnage. Fires burned, turning night to blood-red day. Rogues fought desperately against overwhelming numbers, protecting the young and weak with their own bodies. Anya saw a mother fall, 3 children screaming behind her. She ran, blade flashing, driving off the attackers with desperate fury. Then she saw him. Owen, her father, bound and bleeding in the center of the camp. Kieran stood over him, ice-blue eyes reflecting firelight with malevolent satisfaction. Anya! Kieran's voice carried over the battle's din. Come out, or I kill your father right now! Anya froze, blade trembling in her grip. Through the bond, she felt Varix's sudden spike of terror and rage. He was too far away, fighting 3 attackers at once. Don't! Owen shouted, blood streaming from a cut on his temple. Don't you dare surrender to him. Kieran's blade pressed against Owen's throat. I'm not a patient man, healer. 10 seconds. At the ceremony, her choice had been about duty against her own heart. This was different. Now it was not her pride or future at stake, but lives, blood ready to spill if she faltered. Sacrifice was no longer a question. It was the only path left. Movement at her peripheral. Drystan, emerging from shadows, reaching for her with hands that should have been protecting, not betraying. Understanding crashed down. You told them where we were. Drystan's expression held no remorse. You never belonged here, castle girl. Now come quietly, or more rogues die. Anya's mind raced. She could fight Drystan, but that would give Kieran time to kill her father. She could run, but innocence would die. Or she could surrender and hope Varix would find a way to rescue her. It was no choice at all. Let my father go unharmed, and I'll come peacefully. Kieran's smile was cold triumph. Agreed. Anya took 1 step forward, then another. Through the bond, she felt Varix screaming denial, felt him fighting with redoubled desperation to reach her. I'm sorry, she sent through their connection. I love you. Come for me. Before she reached Kieran, Varix appeared from nowhere, tackling Drystan with savage fury. They hit the ground hard, rolling through ash and blood. When they separated, Varix's claws were buried in Drystan's throat. "Traitor!" Varix snarled and ripped. Drystan's body fell, amber eyes already glazing, but the distraction cost them. Kieran's men surrounded Anya, blades at her back and sides. "Enough!" Kieran commanded. "Come any closer, rogue, and she dies. Withdraw your forces, or I paint this camp with her blood." Varix stood frozen, every muscle coiled for violence he could not unleash without sacrificing his mate. Their eyes met across the burning camp, and Anya saw her own helpless rage reflected back. "I'll find you," Varix promised, his voice carrying absolute conviction. "I'll burn down every castle, kill every alpha who stands between us. You are mine, Anya. Nothing will keep us apart. Nothing." "I know." She let herself be pulled backward, away from him, away from the life they had just begun building. "I'll be waiting." As Kieran's forces retreated with their prize, dragging Owen as added insurance, Anya looked back one final time. Varix stood silhouetted against flames, a lone wolf who had just lost everything that mattered. But she was not a helpless prize to be claimed. She was a healer, yes. But she was also a fighter, and she would find her way back to him. Or die trying. Chapter 7. Breaking the Darkness. The tower room stank of old blood and darker magic. Anya hung from iron chains bolted to stone walls, her wrists raw and bleeding from struggling. Cold iron weakened shifters, made their wolves retreat deep inside where they could not help. But it could not touch the bond that thrummed between her and Varix, a golden thread that sang of his desperate fury and relentless pursuit. Still defiant. Kieran circled her slowly, his ice-blue eyes reflecting torchlight with malevolent satisfaction. 3 days had passed since her capture. 3 days of hunger and cold and waiting. That will change soon enough. Behind him, a cloaked figure prepared instruments that made Anya's skin crawl. The practitioner of dark arts that Kieran had hired moved with unsettling grace, laying out runic stones in precise patterns. The air grew heavy with wrongness, with power that twisted nature rather than working with it. "The first shift bond is considered unbreakable," Kieran said conversationally, pouring himself wine. "But that's not quite accurate, is it? It can be broken. Just requires the right knowledge, the right sacrifice, and the right motivation." He smiled, cold and calculating. "I have all three. Varix will kill you for this. Varix is a rogue with delusions of grandeur. By the time he gathers enough force to attempt a rescue, you'll be mine. The bond severed, a new one forged. Your healing ability will serve me, make me the most powerful alpha in the realm." He moved closer, his breath hot against her cheek. "And you'll thank me for saving you from that savage life." The practitioner began chanting, words in languages older than memory. The runic stones glowed with sickly green light. Pain lanced through Anya's chest as invisible claws tore at the bond connecting her to Varix. She screamed, unable to help herself. The bond resisted. Formed in childhood innocence, in a moment of pure trust and recognition, it refused to break. The dark magic battered against it, but the first shift bond held firm, golden, and unshakable. The practitioner's chanting grew frantic. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The stones cracked, then shattered, exploding in bursts of acrid smoke. He gasped in shock. "This is no ordinary first shift bond," he stammered. "Her energy, this cursed healing spark, has fused with it. It is like trying to break an iron chain with bare hands." "Impossible," the practitioner gasped. "The ritual should have worked. It's never failed before." Kieran's composure finally cracked. He grabbed Anya's throat, squeezing with bruising force. "What are you? What makes your bond so strong?" Through the pain, Anya smiled. "Love. Real love. Something you'll never understand." He backhanded her hard enough to split her lip. Blood filled her mouth, copper and salt. But through the bond, she felt Varix surge with renewed determination, felt him drawing closer. He was coming for her. "Fine." Kieran stepped back, breathing hard. "If I cannot break the bond with ritual, I'll claim you the old way." Forced claiming marks are permanent once sealed with blood. Your wolf will have no choice but to accept me. Terror spiked through Anya, but she forced it down. She was not the helpless castle girl who had fled a wedding months ago. She had learned to fight, to survive, to use the power that lived in her veins. As Kieran moved toward her, his canines elongating for the claiming bite, Anya acted. She reached for that warmth inside her, the healing gift she had used to save Varix. But instead of channeling it outward to mend, she reversed the flow. Her hands, still chained, pressed against Kieran's chest. Power flooded through her, but this time it did not heal. It drained. Kieran gasped, his eyes going wide with shock. Anya felt his strength flowing into her, felt his wolf recoil in confusion and fear. She pulled harder, instinct guiding her, drawing his energy like poison from a wound. He stumbled backward, suddenly weak. The iron chains holding her groaned, then snapped. Her wolf, no longer suppressed, surged forward with savage joy. Anya dropped to the floor, ignoring the pain of her abused body. I am not some prize to be claimed. I am a Luna. I am bonded, and I am done being your victim. She ran, her bare feet silent on cold stone. The tower had multiple levels, and she knew from overhearing guards that Owen was held somewhere below. She found him in a cell 2 floors down, bloodied, but alive. Father. Her hands glowed golden as she touched the lock, using her power in a way she had never attempted before. The metal groaned, heated, then melted. The door swung open. Owen stared at her in amazement. You've grown stronger. I've had good motivation. She helped him to his feet. We need to get out of here before Kieran recovers. But Owen shook his head. No. We opened the gates from inside. I sent a message to the Alpha King before Kieran captured me. Proof of everything. The forged evidence against Tobias, the hired assassins, the dark magic he's been using. Aldous should be here with forces by now. Hope surged through Anya. Then we fight. They moved through the castle like ghosts, surprising guards who assumed them locked away. Anya used her draining ability on any who tried to stop them, leaving unconscious bodies in their wake. Her control had grown since that first instinctive use. Now she could measure how much strength to take, could wield it as a weapon without killing. The main gates loomed ahead, barred from inside by massive wooden beams. Owen and Anya worked together, straining against the weight. The beam lifted, crashed aside. The gates swung open. Outside stood an army. The Alpha King himself sat astride a massive gray wolf, his golden eyes blazing with righteous fury. Behind him, the royal guard formed ranks, and beside them, rogues. 150 strong, with Varix at their head in his enormous black wolf form. The moment his silver eyes found Anya, the bond between them blazed with such intensity she could barely breathe. Then he was running, shifting mid-stride, catching her in arms that trembled with relief and rage. You're alive. Thank the goddess, you're alive. Always, Anya whispered against his chest, feeling whole for the first time in 3 days. I told you I'd be waiting. The Alpha King's voice rang out, carrying absolute authority. Kieran Thornheart, you are charged with murder, conspiracy, use of forbidden magic, and attempted forced claiming. Surrender now, or face execution. Kieran appeared on the castle ramparts, surrounded by his remaining mercenaries. Desperation had replaced his cold composure. This is my territory. You have no authority here. I am the Alpha King. I have authority everywhere. Aldous' power radiated outward, making every shifter present want to submit. And I revoke every protection you once enjoyed. Your lands are forfeit. Your title is stripped. You are nothing but a criminal awaiting judgment. Then I'll die fighting. Kieran shifted, his gray wolf larger than normal, enhanced by the dark magic he had consumed. His mercenaries followed suit, and the battle began. It was chaos and fury and blood. Anya stayed close to Varix, their movements synchronized through the bond. When mercenaries attacked, she drained their strength while Varix struck them down. They fought as one, devastating any who stood against them. Owen led a group of guards to secure the dungeons, freeing prisoners who had been held on false charges. The Alpha King's forces systematically dismantled Kieran's defenses, showing no mercy to those who refused to surrender. Finally, Kieran stood alone on the castle steps, bloodied and beaten. Varix approached in human form, every line of his scarred body radiating lethal intent. Anya walked beside him, her hand in his. "You took her from me," Varix said quietly. "Threatened what is mine, hurt my people. Give me one reason I shouldn't rip out your throat right now." Kieran spat blood. "Because you're no better than me. Just another animal playing at civilization." Anya stepped forward, her hands glowing with power, but not healing or draining this time. Something else. Something she had discovered in her rage and fear. Her power could sense injuries, could feel broken bones and torn flesh, which meant it could also sense where to strike to cause maximum pain without killing. She pressed her palm to Kieran's chest, and he screamed. Not from physical damage, but from the agony of feeling every injury he had ever caused others reflected back on him. Every bruise, every broken bone, every moment of terror. "You will live," Anya said coldly, withdrawing her hand. "You will live a long life remembering this moment, remembering that you lost, that you failed. That will hurt far more than death." The Alpha King approached, his expression carved from stone. "Kieran Thornheart, I sentence you to permanent exile. Your lands are claimed by the crown. Your title and honors are revoked. You will be escorted to the furthest border of my realm and released with nothing but the clothes on your back. If you ever return, execution will be immediate. Do you understand?" Kieran nodded weakly, all fight drained from him. "Good." The Alpha King turned to Varix, and something almost resembling respect crossed his ancient features. "You've proven yourself more than worthy, Rogue King. You led your people with honor, fought with courage, and you've earned the right to protect what is yours." He gestured to the castle and surrounding lands. "These territories are yours now, if you'll have them. A home for your people. Recognition as a legitimate alpha." Varix looked at the castle, then at the forest beyond. "With respect, Alpha King, my people don't need castles, but we would gladly accept the forest lands Tobias was accused of stealing. Let them be our territory, recognized and protected by your law." Aldous smiled, sharp and knowing. "Done. The forest of your childhood is yours, Varix, son of Tobias. May you lead your people well." As guards led Kieran away, as the wounded were tended and the dead mourned, Anya finally allowed herself to collapse against Varix. His arms came around her immediately, solid and safe. "It's over," she whispered. "It's over," he confirmed, pressing his lips to her claiming mark. "And we won. Together." Through their bond, Anya felt his love, his relief, his pride in her strength, and she sent back her own emotions. Gratitude for his relentless pursuit, joy at their reunion, an absolute certainty that no force in existence would ever separate them again. They had survived darkness and betrayal, had fought impossible odds and won, and now, finally, they could begin building the life they had always been meant to share. Chapter 8. Forest of Belonging. Spring painted the ancient forest in shades of renewal. 7 months had passed since the battle at Kieran's castle. 7 months of rebuilding and growth that transformed the wild woods into something extraordinary. Anya stood at the edge of what the rogues now called the Healing Hall, a structure built not from stone, but from living trees carefully coaxed into shape. Their branches formed walls and roof, leaves providing natural shelter. Inside, wounded shifters from across the realm found treatment, regardless of pack or status. Her hand rested on her swollen belly, feeling the twin lives growing inside her. 6 months along, and already they were strong, kicking whenever Varix was near as if recognizing their father's presence through the bond. "They're restless today." Varix emerged from the trees, carrying fresh game from the morning hunt. At 23, he had grown into his role as Alpha of the Forgotten, as they were now officially recognized. The scars remained, but his storm-gray eyes held peace she had never seen in their childhood. "They know you're home." Anya leaned into his embrace, breathing in his scent of pine and earth. "Your daughter especially. She kicks like she's already trying to run." "My daughter?" His hands spanned her belly, reverent and protective. You're certain? A healer knows. She smiled, covering his hands with hers. A girl and a boy. She'll be born first, fierce and impatient. He'll follow, steady and calm. Varix pressed his forehead to hers, emotion thick in his voice. They'll have what we never did. Family. Pack. A place where they belong. They'll have more than that. Anya turned in his arms, looking out at the community they had built. They'll have examples of what real love looks like. The settlement had grown beyond anything she had imagined. Not a traditional pack village with its strict hierarchies, but something new. Rogues who had spent years surviving alone now worked together, building homes integrated into the forest rather than dominating it. Children played freely, their laughter carrying through the trees. The healing hall had become legendary. Word spread of the Luna who could cure wounds that should have been fatal, who treated everyone equally regardless of their past or status. Shifters traveled for days to seek her help, and Anya turned none away. Your father's here. Varix nodded toward the forest path where Owen approached, looking healthier than he had in years. Owen's hair had gone completely gray since the confrontation with Kieran, but his green eyes were bright with contentment. He visited every week, sometimes staying for days, helping wherever needed. The guilt he had carried for decades had finally been laid to rest. Daughter. He embraced her carefully, mindful of her condition. You're glowing. I'm enormous, Anya corrected with a laugh. You're beautiful. Owen placed his hand on her belly, and his expression softened with wonder. Tobias would have loved to meet his grandchildren. Would have been so proud of what you both built here. Varix's jaw tightened briefly, old pain flickering across his features, but he nodded. I like to think he knows somehow. That wherever he is, he sees that his name has been cleared, his honor restored. More than restored. Owen's voice carried weight. The Alpha King officially pardoned Tobias last month, declared him innocent of all charges, acknowledged the injustice done to him. Your father's name is now recorded in the histories as a loyal subject wrongly accused. Silence fell, heavy with emotion. Then Varix pulled Owen into an embrace that spoke of forgiveness and family found. When they separated, both men's eyes were wet. A young rogue approached hesitantly, a girl of perhaps 14 with nervous energy. Luna? There's a family at the border, newly exiled. They heard about our sanctuary and they have a sick child. Anya straightened immediately, healer instincts overriding her physical discomfort. Bring them to the hall. I'll prepare supplies. You should rest, Varix protested. You've been working since dawn. And I'll rest when they're safe. She cupped his scarred face, letting him feel her determination through the bond. This is who we are. Who we'll always be. The place where the lost find home. He searched her eyes, then nodded, because this was why he loved her. Why he had spent years searching for her. Not just because of the bond formed in childhood, but because her heart was large enough to hold all the broken pieces of their world. The family was in desperate condition. The father bore fresh wounds from the exile. The mother was gaunt from hunger, and their son burned with fever. Anya worked through the afternoon, her hands glowing golden as she drew out infection and sealed wounds. By evening, the child slept peacefully, and the parents wept with gratitude. We have nothing to offer in payment, the father said, shame thick in his voice. We were stripped of everything. We don't require payment. Varix placed a hand on the man's shoulder. Only loyalty to our community and willingness to help others as you've been helped. Can you do that? The father nodded, too overcome to speak. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Anya found herself at the lake where it all began. The same lake where she and Varix had played as children, where he had proposed weeks ago, where they had conceived the lives growing inside her. Varix joined her, slipping his arms around her from behind, cradling her belly. 217, he murmured against her ear. What? We now have 217 pack members. Families keep arriving. Word is spreading that the Rogue King and his healer Luna welcome all who have nowhere else to go. Anya leaned back against his chest, watching moonlight dance on water. Is that what we are now? King and queen of outcasts? We're something better. His hand traced patterns on her belly, feeling their children respond to his touch. We're proof that belonging isn't about bloodlines or politics. It's about choice, about building something worth protecting. Movement rippled across the lake. Other pack members emerged from the trees, drawn by some instinct to gather. Families settled on the shore, children playing in the shallows while adults shared stories around small fires. This was their pack, not bound by forced hierarchy or bloodline supremacy, but by shared experience and chosen loyalty. Rogues, exiles, the forgotten and forsaken, all finding purpose together. "Tell me," Anya said softly, "if you could go back, if you could change everything that happened, your father's exile, your mother's death, all those years alone, would you?" Varix was quiet for a long moment, his arms tightening around her. "No," he finally said, "because all of it, every moment of pain and loss and struggle led me to you, led us here, to this pack, these people, these children who will grow up knowing they're wanted. I wouldn't change a single moment if it meant losing this." Anya turned in his arms, kissing him deeply. Through the bond, she felt everything. His love, his gratitude, his absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. "Shift with me," she whispered. "One last time before the twins come. Are you sure? Is it safe? The midwife says gentle running is good for them." She grinned. "Besides, they should know their parents' wolves before they're born." Varix's answering smile was pure joy. They stepped back from the shore, letting the transformation take them. Anya's golden wolf emerged, smaller than his massive black form but no less beautiful. Pregnancy had made her movements more careful, but the wolf inside sang with freedom. Together they ran through the forest of their childhood, now the forest of their future. Behind them, the pack howled in celebration, their voices rising to greet the moon that had witnessed everything. Two wolves, one gold and one black, running side by side through moonlit trees, not as children playing at friendship, but as mates, as alphas, as partners who had fought darkness and won. And when they finally stopped, shifting back to human form with the moon blessing them both, Varix placed his hand over Anya's heart. "You saved me," he said. "That little girl with green eyes who shared her bread with a nameless boy. You saved me then, and you save me every day. We saved each other." Anya's hand covered his. "And now, we'll save anyone who needs it, because that's what it means to be pack, to be family, to belong." As they walked back to their community hand in hand, toward a future bright with possibility and children who would never know exile, Anya understood with perfect clarity what the Alpha King had seen in them. Not just a rogue and his mate, but the beginning of something new. A pack built on compassion rather than dominance, on choice rather than bloodline, on love earned rather than power taken. The forest had always been their true home. Now it was home for hundreds of others who had nowhere else to go. And it would continue growing, season after season, sheltering the lost until the day came when no shifter had to know what it meant to be forgotten. That was their legacy. Not castles or gold, but belonging. And it was everything.